Here is White. Play action. Thrown out the back of the end zone, and it's picked off. Picked off by Illinois' Julian Jones. And he runs it in for an Illinois touchdown.
Like we always do with this time. I go for mine. I get to shine. Now throw your hands up in the sky. Go for mine. I get to shine. Now throw your hands up in the sky.
And welcome to Illini Drive here on WPGU 107.1. I am Orri Benatar, joined by Will Gerard, Jade Hilton, Tommy Polcyn, and Jake Hasan. Hello to all of you watching on Urbana Public Television on this Wednesday evening. It is Monday evening, currently right now, for all you people listening on the radio. That was Brian Barnhart's call of Julian Jones's pick six for the Illini in their 20-7 victory over the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. A 2-0 start for the Illini. They are first in the Big Ten West. A lot of people didn't see this coming. It's a big victory for Illinois football, but I think we have to start, Tommy, to talk about the defense, who just completely told everyone, we're not going to give up 30-plus points to this Western Kentucky offense. We're going to shut them out with 7.
Yeah, I mean, they look great. Obviously, we mentioned Isaiah Gay, some of those guys out there. And, I mean, this is what your Lovie Smith team should look like. Strong on defense, forcing turnovers, capitalizing on that, and I mean, it's great to see. I mean, it definitely was fun to watch.
I mean, it's just, like you said, it's a trademark Lovie Smith team. Like, strong linebacker play, strong line play, and then just getting it done. I mean, just gritty game on offense. It was awesome. I mean, I don't think any of us picked Illinois to win last week. No. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's a very welcome surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we all didn't think that Illinois was going to win this game. We kind of had this on the schedule as like a kind of a guaranteed loss because, like Western Kentucky, Conference USA powerhouse, 11-win team. Mike White is a Maxwell Award finalist. This guy threw for 3,000 yards last year, 30-some touchdowns. He had a fine game stats-wise. He threw 28 of 43 for 238 yards and a pick, but that's mostly because Western Kentucky was forced to throw the ball for like the entire second half. Their running game just completely didn't work. The Illini gave up only 6 net rushing yards, which is just insane. And then receiving-wise, I mean, Necarious Fant for WKU, 110 yards, 10 catches. The touchdown was late in the game. Illinois held Western Kentucky to 0 points for basically 3 quarters. They scored their lone touchdown in the 4th. But the biggest thing on defense that we saw throughout Illini football, we mentioned this before, defensive end studs. You had Smoot, you had Ward, you had Phillips. Now we've got 2 more, Bobby Roundtree and Isaiah Gay. Roundtree with the interception, forced the fumble. Isaiah Gay, great play on the line. The play that led to the pick six, Isaiah Gay got to the running back, tackled him for like probably a 3-4 yard loss to get them down to the 2, which forced Mike White to just hurl it from his own end zone to Julian Jones for the pick six.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great play. And obviously, like you said, I mean, the biggest thing that kind of really stood out to me all game was just that we're consistently getting that pressure. I mean, whether it be them running the ball or even when they're passing, there was always at least 2 to 3 Illinois defenders in their backfield. I mean, when you kind of limit them and like don't let them have that time to sit around and say, okay, I'm gonna toss it downfield, do all this. I mean, that's how we're gonna win games. It's huge, and I mean, if they can keep that up, I don't see why they can't keep going.
Jake, are Roundtree and Gay kind of set up to be studs for this year? Do you see them being sort of the leaders of this entire defense? Maybe they could have some great freshman campaigns.
I mean, 2 weeks in, you're always cautious about throwing out the stud label this early, but I mean, definitely leaders. I mean, that's apparent, just especially after the game on Saturday. And I mean, just Mike White did not look comfortable at all after the first couple minutes because his offensive line wasn't doing anything for him. And we talked about how Illinois had to improve with their defensive pressure from week 1 to week 2, and they did it. So like making those improvements so quickly is awesome.
Yeah, the fact that they made the improvements so quickly, I think, besides the fact winning the game, holding WKU to 7 points, the improvement and of how the young guys kind of just came out and played so well, just huge difference. I mean, not a huge difference between 1 and 2. Defensively, huge difference between week 1 and 2. But, you know, amazing to see freshmen to step up, true freshmen, going from week 1, facing all that adversity in that game against Ball State, and then into week 2, just playing like they're seniors against a really, really good offensive team. Not the best team they're going to play all year, definitely. That's probably still goes to Ohio State, but they got a real big challenge in South Florida next week. We'll get to that very shortly. But moving on to the Illini offense, Chase Crouch, I think, had a better game than he did last week. 14 to 25, 107 yards with a pick. He looked really confident in the run game, running for 57 yards, and that athletic leaping touchdown, the lone offensive touchdown of the game. But obviously, you can't talk about the Illini offense without talking about the duo of Mikes, Epstein and Dudek. 46 yards receiving, 6 catches for Mike Dudek, and Mike Epstein with a 100-yard game, 21 carries for 112 yards. Kendrick Foster, who started last week, just 3 carries to 11. I think we've pretty much just seen, Jake, Mike Epstein is going to be the leader of this rushing attack and is going to be, besides Dudek, the most effective player on this offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's how the offense is going to run, through the Mikes. I mean, that's just what it, because Epstein's showing us that we can rely on him. I mean, after week 1, the question was, can he repeat and build upon an impressive week 1 performance? And he brought out an even better performance in week 2. So, I mean, unfortunately for Kendrick Foster, that puts him more into like a change of pace role. But, I mean, when you got someone playing this well in Epstein, you can't really complain about it that much.
Yeah, I mean, going with that, too, you mentioned Epstein's. Honestly, I was really impressed with Bonner, too. I mean, he's a big guy out there, and, like, he's, especially in the goal line situations and those couple, like, short yards to get that first down, I think he's going to be huge and going to be a great compliment to Epstein. So, I mean, that backfield looks strong.
Yeah, I think it's a great combo to always have a guy like Mike Epstein, sort of a Darren Sproulsy type running back. Fast, has the strength, gets through the holes quickly, and he's a good running back for screenplays. And then you have sort of the Mike Tolbert style, Ravon Bonner, sort of the vulture that kind of gets all the touchdowns in the red zone. He hasn't had a touchdown yet, but I guarantee you when Illinois has red zone offense, he's going to get a lot of carries, and he's just going to rumble and tumble past the goal line for a touchdown. As we're here on Illini Drive on WPGU 1071, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, make sure to visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1. Once again, fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1 for more ticket information. Before we move on to talk more Illinois football, I just wanted to throw out today is 9/11. It is a day that we should never forget, the terrible attacks that happened on America in 2001. Obviously, people who have family still affected by it, prayers out to them, and obviously never forget what happened on 9/11. But let's continue now with Illini football. What does this mean now for chances of making a bowl game? It's still early, but the Illini last year got their second win in the middle of October. Win number 2 comes in early September this year. That is a huge difference. Lovey's already 2/3 of the way there from equaling last year's Illini record, which is, I think, big. 2 wins, one against a team we expected them to, but another against a team we really didn't expect them to. Is the 6-win season now seeming a little bit more plausible, or is the Big Ten just too strong to say, the Illini are going to roll out maybe 2 or 3 conference wins and get 6 or some wins this season?
I mean, I remember when we were doing the predictions earlier in the year, I said we would win. I said we would win 5 games, and that was with me predicting a Western Kentucky loss. I don't see why we can't do it. I mean, I think we'll give Nebraska a game. We can beat Purdue. Northwestern's in there. I mean, there's some winnable games out there, and I don't see why. Obviously, it's not going to be easy, but I definitely think it's something we could do.
It definitely makes games that we earlier predicted to be close losses, definitely makes those seem more plausible. I know one that sticks out to me is the Minnesota game. We talked about how PJ Fleck's probably going to improve that program a lot, but we still weren't really expecting a win from Illinois, so that seems plausible now. Purdue seems plausible. I mean, there's a lot of in-conference games now that look within reach for a win.
See, I think a couple of conference games look within reach for the win. Obviously, the South Florida game is a huge sort of mix-up. South Florida didn't play last week because of the hurricane. They might come here to play. We'll talk a little bit about that very shortly, but the Big Ten as a whole, we'll talk a lot more about Big Ten football in our second segment, but 8 teams in the Big Ten are 2-0 to start. Only 1 team in the Big Ten hasn't won a game, and that's Rutgers. But they have actually looked pretty good to start the season. They played okay against Washington, a former playoff team, and they only lost by 3 points against Eastern Michigan. So I don't think that Rutgers game is going to be a cakewalk for Illinois, even though it is at home. Purdue is good. Purdue looks a lot better than people thought they would. They only lost by a touchdown to Lamar Jackson's Louisville Cardinals. They put up a victory this past week against Ohio. So maybe that Purdue game becomes more of a toss-up than we thought, but The big one for me is Rutgers, because I think the Rutgers game is not going to be as easy, because Rutgers is likely going to get their first win of the season against Morgan State next week. Rutgers is no slouch, but then you're seeing some other Big Ten teams playing in the schedule who are playing great football. Iowa, big win against Iowa State. Minnesota looks really good. Even though Ohio State lost to Oklahoma, it's still Ohio State. But I definitely think the chances are a lot better for the Illini to get that 5th win. I think the South Florida game is very winnable. I still think Rutgers is going to be a win. Indiana or Northwestern are probably the ones I'm looking at the most as the best opportunities. The Illini could, hold it off late to get that win number 6, but we could see them get 2 out of 3 at the very end of the season to make it to a bowl game.
I just looked at the schedule again. I talked myself into it. We're winning 6 games now. We're making the bowl.
Okay, what are the other 4?
So I don't know why, again, like I said before, but we just always play Nebraska well. I think we'll get them. I definitely think Rutgers is a win. I don't see us losing to Purdue. They look better. You're not wrong. Like they look like a decent team. It's just like I feel like we can't lose them 2 years in a row. And so that's a win to me. And I think we'll beat Northwestern too. I mean, it's definitely one of those games that always is up in the air. It's going to be like a close game the whole way through. But I think that with everything on the line, trying to get that 6th win, I think we could do it.
I think those home games are really where the key is, because I think away at Iowa, too hard.
It's homecoming for them too.
Yeah, away at Ohio State, also going to be tough, unless the Buckeyes just continue to tumble and just crash and burn this season. Wisconsin at home, I think it's a better chance for the Illini. I just don't think that game's going to go too well. But obviously it's early days, but I think, Jake, Illini football fans should feel a lot more confident, especially after getting this impressive win against the Hilltoppers.
I mean, optimism and attitude about the football team is definitely 100,000 billion% higher than it was.
100,000 billion. I don't even know if that's a number.
But it's just, you can't even put a number on it, because before the season even started, we were in the same room saying that they only win 3 to, Tommy said 6 now,
5,
but I mean, we were up to, we were between 3 and 5. And now we got people saying 6. I think 6 is within reach. I might even vouch to say 7 if they keep playing well, if things keep going as they are.
like that.
But from this side of 2-0, I would venture to say 7 is within reach even. So I mean, yeah, when things are good, they're good. But as soon as Illinois hits a bump in the road, then that's when the real test comes to see if they could bounce back.
You're right there, buddy.
Yeah, just a little,
phlegm.
So I mean,
that was.
Moving on. I mean, if the next bump in the road comes against USF or Nebraska or Iowa, I mean, you guys mentioned the homecoming game for Iowa at Iowa. It would depend on how Illinois bounces back, how they approach the game after that. So, I mean, things look really good, though.
No, things look pretty good to start. I think the first game was good win, maybe, not so great team. This last win, obviously, is just making everyone go yeah.
First game made us all nervous, I think, because we expected a bigger win, and we only won by 3 against Ball State. So I think this was very much a confidence win.
Mm-hmm. This was a confidence win. I mean, also one thing to point out is that first 2 games of this season compared to what we've seen, last year because North Carolina, but Block I has had a really good showing for Ball State and Western Kentucky. There's been a much better student showing for those 2 games, much better than what we saw against Murray State last year, much better than 2 years ago. Tommy, you and I and Will were here to see the crowd for Kent State, the delayed game, and I wasn't here for Western Illinois, but Western Illinois wasn't as packed. Ball State and Western Kentucky, Block I has been able to fill out, and will they fill out this upcoming weekend? Because the South Florida game has a huge question mark of where we're going to play. There's a lot of rumors going around that Raymond James Stadium, the former home of Lovie Smith, who used to coach for the Buccaneers, the team he coached before the Illini, the hurricane, obviously, Irma hitting the state of Florida. Hurricane Jose could be hitting Florida. It might drift away. It is hitting the island nations, which is just so sad to see them get hit by 2 straight hurricanes. But this South Florida game could get moved to Memorial Stadium. And we could see, rather than Illinois go on a flight, play in Tampa on a Friday night. Lovie Smith did say today that that's what they're preparing to do. And they're
3 hours ago.
Okay, 3 hours. Well, the Chicago Tribune, Illini plan to fly on Tampa. Yeah, that's from the Lovie quote. But, question, it's not confirmed yet if the game is being moved to Champaign, and it's not confirmed if the game is in Tampa yet. So we don't have the news about that currently. But if the game does get moved to Champaign, it might not be a Friday night game. I think it would be a Saturday night game because South Florida needs the time to set up the flights, to set up the hotel reservations and stuff like that. It would be a whole sort of melange of just rearranging stuff. But Tom, do you think if the game, I mean, obviously we would rather the game be in Tampa, which means the hurricane doesn't hit and the conditions are okay. But if the game is in Champaign, all of a sudden, does that give the Illini a chance to go 3-0 in non-conference?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely improves the chance. I think I saw that the line opened up at -15 for this game. So,
wow.
It's at 18 according to ESPN.
Okay, so I don't see why it's that big. But definitely playing in Champaign, especially in front of the home fans, which, I mean, on Saturday I was there and they showed out. It was pretty crowded, and I was pretty surprised and happy to see it. But I definitely think that being able to eliminate all the travel, all that stuff, and be able to kind of sleep in your own bed is huge. And I think that if they can get that, it'd be huge.
I mean, I have to agree. I think Illinois had the momentum even if it is in Tampa. But, I mean, if you play this game at home, that's a huge boost, too, because I think Block I would show out more than they did the first 2 weeks for this game.
Well, would they? I mean, that's the question, because when you're looking at the way they're going to have to schedule, Illinois and South Florida are going to have to make a decision either tonight or early tomorrow morning, because if the game is moving to Champaign and if they do decide we can do this on a Friday night, even on a Saturday night, they're going to have at least 3 days to try and get tickets out, because they're going to have to make all new tickets for this game. They're going to have to figure out a way. It's kind of going to be like, a rain delay in baseball or something. Jade?
So my question is, who's going to get the money for the ticket sales?
Who's going to get the money for the ticket
if they move
sales?
the game here?
Interesting question.
I have a feeling that they do something with hurricane relief if it does have to be moved here. I think they would regardless, but I think for the most part, and that's probably the biggest hiccup. I mean, I'm sure University of South Florida wants some kind of kicker here for themselves. I'm sure they don't want to just give all these profits or proceeds to Illinois, which I'm sure, as I said, would probably end up going to hurricane relief anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, but there's also the off chance that the Illini, since they have so little time to give away tickets, they might try and give them, for free, which we've seen it for the past 2 games. If they decide that the game is in Champaign and it is for hurricane relief, then they are going to charge, which I think would be a great way to sort of balance out the whole thing, because Florida's going to need a ton of money for hurricane relief. I mean, 4 million people lost power in the state. If Jose hits at the Category 4, which it's at right now, then it's going to get even worse. It's getting really bad there. So, Jake, that's a great idea. I think you should let the Illini athletic department know and say, if the game does get moved to Champaign, hurricane relief, man.
I think I tweet too much for anyone of note to listen to me through Twitter. But we could try.
The Illini Drive Twitter account will put in a request.
I don't know about that. I mean, requests would be interesting.
I think I might have sullied the name of that Twitter account. I'm not gonna lie.
You just got to hashtag your tweets. You tweet a lot, but you no hashtags. You use all those 140 characters, man. You got to, Cardinals are dead, Cardinals are dead, Cardinals are dead. Those are like half your tweets.
I'm not even.
Okay.
We won't talk about that right now.
Yeah, we'll talk a little baseball later on in final thoughts. But we're going to take a break here on Illini Drive. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the big tennis star that made headlines, former Illini, and Kevin Anderson. Talk a little bit more about some fall sports that happened over the past weekend, and a little more about Big Ten football. Is this Ohio State loss mean Penn State is in the running for the playoff? We'll talk about all that and more here on Illini Drive on WPGU 1071.
You're watching Illini Drive on Urbana Public Television. Tune in Monday nights at 6 p.m. to listen live on WPGU 1071.
I'd like to just, mention my team, Neville, Charlie, Alistair, Jay, Alexis. Thanks, guys, for all your support. I'd like to mention, Brad and my whole Illinois tennis team who's out here supporting me every single year.
And welcome back to Illini Drive here on WPGU 1071. That was Kevin Anderson being interviewed after his U.S. Open final loss to Rafael Nadal in straight sets, 6-3, 6-3, 6-4. It was his first ever Grand Slam final. The former Illini men's tennis star shouting out his head coach, Brad Dancer, and the Illini fans and tennis faithful. As I am Orri Benatar, returning with Will Gerard, Jade Hilton, Tommy Polcyn, and Jake Hasan. Credit to Fighting Illini Productions for providing those 2 bumps, and thanks to Will for putting those together. Solid producer there. I mean, he's the man. It's Will Gerard. So we're going to start off talking about Kevin Anderson. Makes the final of the U.S. Open. Kind of a shock. The U.S. Open is over. The Grand Slam season is over, which obviously Jade's upset about. We don't have another Grand Slam until January when Serena Williams comes back while holding her new child and wins the Australian Open. And then we'll also see...
Literally while holding her new child, she could probably win it.
Oh, probably. I mean, women's tennis this year, there were 4 different Grand Slam winners. We'll talk a little bit about that.
I saw a tweet today. It was Maria Sharapova took PEDs and still couldn't beat Serena Williams.
That is true. That is very true. I mean, she is the GOAT. Let's face it. Maybe the greatest tennis player ever, male or female. But let's talk more about Kevin Anderson and the fact this Illini men's tennis star was able to get to a U.S. Open final in a 2017 tennis year, which saw us go back in time to 2007. Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal both winning 2 Grand Slams this year. But from Jade, from a Illini tennis perspective, Kevin Anderson, I mean, this is a big deal that he made this final. How do you think he's going to bounce back from this for 2018?
Yeah, this is definitely incredible, and it really puts Illini tennis on the map. It's you don't really see that many college players coming out of college and making it to Grand Slam finals, so this is such an accomplishment for him, and we're all so excited for that. I'm sure he's going to bounce back and have so many great tournaments in the future, and this is like such a good break for him, and it's really good to see that.
Now, this is not to knock on Anderson, but I think obviously this U.S. Open was filled with injuries. The fact that Djokovic wasn't playing and Murray was injured, do you think that helped factor in to Anderson making the final? Because his draw, he didn't have to face Nadal or Federer until he got to the final.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Not having those guys made it a lot easier for him to make that final. Kevin Anderson's the type of player that has this huge serve, but other than that, his game kind of is missing those elements. And we saw that once he played Nadal, he didn't have one break point the whole match. And how can you win a tournament doing that? Nadal's such a grinder. He'll get every single ball, and he'll make you work for it. And Kevin really struggled in the final.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing to take away from that final, like strategy-wise from a tennis standpoint, I mean, Kevin Anderson's a hard-hitting acer. He just gets aces for the most part. He had a lot of unforced errors. He went up to the net a lot, would miss those shots at the net. But the biggest thing is that even when he's serving those 130-mile-an-hour first serves, getting those in, Nadal, you see him take those returns, he's like up against the wall of Arthur Ashe Stadium. So you can't even compete with that. Especially, I mean, Kevin Anderson also, just like Madison Keys, I think he had Grand Slam final nerves. We saw Madison Keys basically break down at the end of the second set against Sloane Stephens in the women's final. She just couldn't, emotionally, she just couldn't handle it. Kevin Anderson probably handled it a little bit better emotionally, but I think from a nerve standpoint, it just didn't work out for him.
Absolutely. It's like the first time they've ever been in that moment. And it's unfortunate that they couldn't wrap their head around it, I guess, and step up. And at the end of the day, that's what a champion is. And Sloane Stephens and Nadal, they are the Grand Slam champions, and they played amazing. Yeah,
the Grand Slam calendar year over in tennis. Kevin Anderson, 2 weeks, 7 matches, 124 aces, igniting Illini Nation, just tweeted out by the Illini men's tennis account. All of the Illini fans were excited about this. He got a video board shout out during the football game against Western Kentucky. Don't know when the last time we saw an Illini tennis player getting up there. But also we should point out, I think it's important, Illini men's tennis alums have always had success. Rajiv Ram, former Illini men's tennis star, was on the 2003 national championship team. He won a medal at the Rio Olympics in 2016 with Venus in the mixed doubles. I believe it was silver. They lost to Maddox Sands and Sock in that All-American final. So Illini men's tennis representing. They're actually going to be starting their season this week. In tennis, you kind of have these sort of fall tournaments that kind of happen. It's not actual regular season play. Men's tennis is going to Newport, Rhode Island for the ITA Hall of Fame tournament. It's going to be their first ever grass court tournament. Brad Dancer said that in the press conference before Lovie Smith talked in his Monday presser. But the rest of Illini sports over the past weekend, soccer took 2 losses in Oklahoma. First to the Cowboys of Oklahoma State, 2-0. Then to the Oklahoma Sooners in Norman, 2-1. Football defeating Western Kentucky 20-7. Men's and women's cross country moving up in the Midwest rankings. They got a win at the John McNichols Invite. Volleyball, though, big weekend at Huff Hall, losing to Stanford in straight sets in Stuff Huff. It was the biggest crowd Illini volleyball seen in that place. And then losing to Colorado in a marathon 5-center. I went to the Stanford game. It was a tough match for them. Ali Bastianelli played out of her mind. She played great, but Stanford just had too much composure. The Illini would have 3 or 4 chances to get a point, but then the Stanford defense just kind of held up. As we move on now to Big Ten football, in the last couple minutes of this second segment. Obviously, we have to talk about the fact that Ohio State lost to Oklahoma, number 2 in the country. Baker Mayfield sticking the flag in the middle of the field. He apologized for it, though.
I hate that, by the way. I
Well,
hate that
you
move.
hate that, but I don't hate that.
Why apologize?
Because he offended a lot of Columbus people, and he tried. He
What
didn't want to
what
be
about when Ohio
disrespectful.
State sung their song in the middle of their field last year?
You sing a song after every game. Illinois would sing a song.
Yeah, but they
away.
did it on Oklahoma's field.
So it's not like they're
So, I
sticking
mean-
an OSU flag in the middle
Yeah,
of the field.
but that's like, it's the same thing in their minds. Like, I'm sure that offended a lot of Oklahoma
Well,
fans.
I have a biased perspective of it, obviously. So
From like, just to me, I don't know about you, Tommy.
I'm
from
with you, Joe.
from an
of
unbiased
course you are.
from an unbiased opinion, like I just think that's a really awesome like competitive move.
It's
like
a-
if
yeah,
you don't
he was
like it,
fired
if
up.
you don't like it, beat them. Don't lose.
Hey,
loved
we
that move so much, and it made me so happy to see that video all over Twitter.
Gosh.
I wanted to personally thank Baker for doing that. I hope he does it
I wish he
again.
still had the stash,
I hope
though.
it happens every week.
Oh God.
I mean, it's
okay.
a good, and that'd be an actually really cool trademark move if you did that. Every
I don't.
week.
I don't think Army would do that. Army has a little bit more respect than Oklahoma.
But the reason I would assume he did the apology is because not because people are offended with it, because Baker Mayfield does not strike me as a type to care if people in Columbus, Ohio are offended by what he did. But I think it's because someone, probably his agent, regardless whoever it was, probably came up to him and said, "Hey man, like you got to address this because this is going to hurt your draft stock."
I don't even think it's the draft stock. I just feel like the Oklahoma athletic department was probably like, "Hey, I understand why you did it, but I feel like they kind of made him apologize."
Well, obviously they made him
Yeah.
apologize.
Oh yeah. No,
of
this was
course.
not a move he made. He didn't make this decision himself.
This wasn't Baker.
Yeah, but more importantly,
Not
I
my
mean,
Baker.
this loss, it's not about the Baker Mayfield sticking the flag in the middle of the field and making every person in Columbus, hate themselves for the entire weekend and probably still for the whole week. I'm sure my dad works in an office. I mean, Ohio State through and through. Fridays at work, everyone wears Ohio State gear or like Bengals or Browns. I'm sure they're all coming into work on this Monday. Everyone in Columbus coming into work on Monday and basically just sulking to their coworkers about how they look. Ohio State played terribly in this game. JT Barrett was not impressive. J.K. Dobbins should have gotten the ball more. But I think the biggest thing now is that this shakes up the entire Big Ten completely. Illini fans, you guys have a better record than Ohio State. Enjoy it while it lasts.
We want Bama.
Yeah, we want Bama, exactly, for Illinois. But this shakes up the Big Ten so much. I mean, now my prediction of Ohio State, Penn State in the playoff is actually more plausible. Because if Ohio State beats Penn State, they could both make it. I mean, that's it. Penn State's in the driver's seat. The door opens for them as the best team in the Big Ten, even though they dropped a spot in the standings only because Oklahoma, Clemson, and USC all beat ranked teams pretty convincingly this past weekend in a great weekend of college football. Penn State's got the driver's seat, but honestly, Tommy, don't count out Michigan and don't count out Wisconsin.
Yeah, no, I mean they both look good too. I was with Penn State from the beginning. Those are my guys right now. Like, that's a good team, and Saquon looks amazing. Like he's been blowing guys up. So I don't see them losing a game honestly until maybe once they get those like playoff matchups, the Big Ten, everything. It'll definitely be tougher, and they could drop one there. But I actually might take my USC pick back and go with Penn State for the championship.
We'll see if that happens.
The Big Ten's going to be, obviously now it's up for grabs. I mean, week 8, the Michigan-Penn State game's huge now.
And it's at Happy Valley.
It's at Penn State. So, I mean, that's huge for them. And then Ohio State's just got to run. They can't lose again.
No, they have to run the table. They have no choice. That's the only way they're going to make the playoff. They're kind of in the position Penn State was last year. Penn State lost early to Pitt. They ran the table, beat Ohio State in their backyard, wins the Big Ten, and even they didn't make the playoff. So maybe Ohio State's going to be in that position. They have to beat that Penn State team. They have to win that game.
Because then you get that rematch at home this year again in week 9.
Yep.
I mean, you get a chance to redeem yourselves in Columbus and Penn State. I mean, if they beat Michigan, they're coming in hot then.
Yeah, I mean, the defining games of the Big Ten this year, Penn State v. Michigan, Penn State v. Ohio State. The results of those games are going to determine, because let's say Penn State loses to both Michigan and Ohio State. Ohio State will be on 1 loss. Michigan could still be undefeated, but that means we're in the same situation we were last year. Ohio State v. Michigan decides who wins the Big Ten East, even though neither of them won the Big Ten East because of the whole way the standings work and all that. But if Penn State beats both Michigan and Ohio State late in the season, then the Nittany Lions are going to make the playoff. They're going to make the Big Ten championship, play Wisconsin. maybe Iowa, maybe even Illinois. Who knows? But Penn State now, you have to see them and say they have to make the playoff.
What are you going to do if Illinois goes to Columbus and Ohio State's season rides on the Illinois game?
I said earlier in the year, why not? Why not pull a little Richard? Why not pull Juice Williams?
It was 10 years ago, so maybe the
10-year anniversary action.
Little 10-year
I
anniversary.
mean, what do you
And
like?
Chase
Honestly, what are
Crouch takes
you
the
going to do?
Illinois
Oh,
flag
what am I
and
gonna
puts
do?
it right in the middle of the whole shit.
Oh, what am I gonna do?
Give it. I need it. I need it. I need it. I need it.
I mean, it would be bittersweet because when Illinois did beat Ohio State in 07, obviously I was upset because I had no connections to Illinois, before I came here. But hopefully I'll be at that game, potentially in Columbus.
18th.
November 18th. It's the weekend. We're all going home for Thanksgiving. Hopefully I'll be there, but I'll just be proud to see both my college teams play against each other.
Don't be that guy.
Okay.
Don't pick.
Fine. I will
Pick.
pick. Who would I rather win?
Pick.
Ohio State.
I knew that was.
Only because
Your cap shirt over there.
and my Yankees had, yeah. Only reason I say Ohio State, it's going to be in Columbus, and Ohio State actually has a chance still to make the playoff. If it was the other way around,
If Illinois is undefeated.
if Illinois, oh God, if Illinois is undefeated,
Was
wow.
Urban Meyer on the hot seat?
No, Urban
Yes.
Meyer's not. No,
Yes.
no, we'll never
Yes.
lose Urban
Get that
Meyer.
rumor started.
No, I don't
We
want.
need it.
No Jim Tressel back either. No, if Illinois is undefeated, if they were, that would be amazing. That would be incredible to see Illinois against Ohio State. OSU 1 loss, Illinois undefeated. That would be the game of the decade for both of these. Well, maybe not Ohio State, but it'd be the game of the decade for
I can just
Illinois.
see Chase running that flag right into the middle of the field right now. I need it.
Well, there's something, Illini fans. Tweet it.
I don't know if Ohio State would be able to survive having a flag
They might
planted at
disband.
midfield.
They might disband the program if
Tweet,
that happens.
tweet us at Illini Drive. I mean, would you rather just stick with that Baker Mayfield, stick the flag in the field, or would Chase Crouch sticking an Illinois flag at the shoe be the greatest moment in Illinois football history? Tweet us at Illini Drive your thoughts about that. While you think about that, we're going to take a very, very quick break. And when we come back, we'll begin our final thought segments as we all talk a little bit about some different stories in sports when we return to Illini Drive on WPGU 1071.
You're watching Illini Drive on Urbana Public Television. Tune in Monday nights at 6 p.m. to listen live on WPGU 1071.
Welcome back to Illini Drive. Here is your score update. In baseball, the Chicago Cubs fell to the Milwaukee Brewers 3-1. They play the New York Mets tomorrow at 7. And the Chicago White Sox defeated the San Francisco Giants yesterday 8-1. They play the Royals tonight at 7. And in Monday Night Football, New Orleans and Minnesota are tied at 3. The second quarter is about to start. And the LA Chargers play the Denver Broncos tonight in Denver.
Thank you, Jade, for that score update. Yeah, Monday Night Football underway. Also, NFL news that just came in. Arizona Cardinals running back David Johnson has dislocated his wrist. He will likely have surgery. So all you fantasy owners who picked David Johnson #1 overall, like me in one of my leagues, yeah, tough times. But we're going to begin our final thoughts segment, and we're going to start off with Jade here. She's going to give her review of the Grand Slam year in tennis, as that's it. The Grand Slams are over for 2017.
Yeah, so I'm kind of sad that the Grand Slams are over for the year. But like we were talking about earlier, we saw like a lot of up and downs in each tournament. There wasn't much consistency, especially on the women's side. And on the men's side, it was kind of like a repeat of the past, seeing Nadal and Federer taking those 2 titles each. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, the one question that men's side, obviously, flashback to 07, Federer, Nadal. Women's side, up and down. Serena Ozzy in that final against her sister, woke up at 2 a.m. for that. I remember texting you during it. Yelena Ostapenko, huge surprise for the French. Muguruza winning Wimbledon. Sloane Stephens winning the U.S. Open this past weekend. The question I want to ask you, though, what was your favorite Grand Slam match for 2017? I know mine.
Favorite match? In terms of playing,
excitement, storylines, upsets.
for me, just Kevin Anderson and Nadal was so exciting. Like being an Illini tennis player. That's like, when's the last time that has ever happened? It's never happened.
Never, yeah, exactly.
So that was very exciting for me to see that.
Well, the one I'll throw out there is the Nadal-Muller Wimbledon quarterfinal that went 16-14 in the 5th. I remember watching that match during the summer. It was storming outside. Connection was in and out, but that was just an incredible match. That's my tennis highlight of the year. Plus, I like the Australian Open is like underratedly one of my favorite Grand Slams. Wimbledon's my favorite, But the Australian Open this year was tremendous. I thought Federer and Serena both winning. It was some exciting matches, great finals. So,
I might change mine.
Yeah, Serena v. Venus.
I'm gonna say Federer surprising us.
Yeah, I mean
When
Federer
he took
winning
that
twice.
break off and he comes back and he wins it, I'm just like, that's my guy.
That's your guy. But yeah, tennis season is pretty much over. The only big tennis stuff that's going to be happening, we've got the Laver Cup, this brand new sort of Ryder Cup format, Europe against the United States, coming up in next week, and then the Davis and the Fed Cup. The U.S. women could be winning the Fed Cup as American women's tennis has been dominating. Moving on now to Tommy's final thoughts, and we all know what's coming. The Fighting Irish losing to Georgia 20-19. The undefeated watch has ended and only took 2 weeks.
You know, Saturday was a real sad night for me. I was really disappointed. I'm still hurting pretty hard, but I also have a big spin on this. So when we did our predictions, I predicted that undefeated. I didn't think they were going to win the championship. I thought they'd make a playoff, but I didn't think they'd win it. So now they have that loss. They've got the chip on their shoulder. Everybody's down on Notre Dame, about to fall back out of the rankings, okay? They've still got games against, let's see, Stanford, number 19 right now, Miami, number 17, number 4, USC. They're going to win out, make that playoff. They're not losing again. They only lose once. Brian Kelly's about to save his job. He's about to make Brian Kelly stinks, but he's about to save that job. So they lost by 1 to number 15, Georgia, but they're about to win out. Now I decided they've got that chip. They're winning it all.
I think they could lose to North Carolina in Chapel Hill. It's either that or they lose at home. No, you know what? I'm calling it. They lose to Navy. That is my second loss.
Lose to Navy?
Lose to Navy.
So you think they'll go undefeated till Navy?
No, I think they'll lose to USC too.
No, they're not losing.
They're going to lose 4 games at least this year.
USC.
You don't
I can
think?
for sure say they won't lose USC. They're not going to lose to Navy. Are you kidding me?
Dude, Navy is solid. I love the way they run their offense. It's
You
so
like
exciting.
that?
Yeah.
It's trash.
What?
It's not even real football.
Dude, you're disrespecting the Navy. It's the American Navy, for
Yeah,
God's
Not the
sake.
Navy,
lose.
just their football team.
Yeah, just their
But they're in the
football
Navy too.
team. Great guys, I'm sure. I love them, but I don't want them to win a football game.
But
I mean, he's
But yeah, no,
got a
that's fine.
point.
But I don't think their offense is that trash. I think it's interesting. It's kind of like Georgia Tech with the triple option.
That's trash too.
No, it's not. Why is it trash?
It's
I mean, it's not really trash if it works.
Exactly, and it does.
Works. And sure, like I'll give you that, but it's not. I don't know. I don't want to talk about Navy football and Georgia Tech. Anyway, Notre Dame, we got it.
You
We're
got
going. Go win out the rest of the year.
Run the table.
Run the table.
Yeah, Tommy and I, the second that Notre
Shake
Dame.
down the Thunder, baby.
Yeah, the second we both saw OSU and Notre Dame lost. You know, we're 1-1 bros, pretty much. We'll see if both Ohio State and
Real
Notre Dame
sad
win out.
right now.
We're gonna move on now to our producer Will Gerard, who's gonna get his final thought in. He's gonna give us our thoughts on Illini football and also give us an update on who we can expect on Illini Drive for the next upcoming weeks.
All right, so listeners, this is my first time talking on air today. So I got to shout out the Illini football team. I know we talked about it earlier in the show, but I thought it was a great showing. I thought the defense played extremely well, especially considering how many young guys were out there on the field. I think there's a lot of promise with this Lovie Smith team going forward, just the way that they were going for strips. There was a pick six. It kind of was reminiscent of some Bears teams back in the day, and it makes me I mean, we're all objective reporters here, but seeing them come out with a win where no one expected them to win at all, it kind of makes me want to sip the Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm not going to jump to six wins necessarily, but I know, like we were talking about earlier, we were saying, maybe 3-4 wins. I think this team could legitimately compete in the Big Ten, and it'll be interesting to see how things play out.
So, I mean, do you think that you said no bowl game, but as a Champaign native, and as a student, is this the most hype and excitement you've seen around an Illini football team after the first 2 games?
I wouldn't say that necessarily, but like watching this team play, it's a bit reminiscent of I'd say the team right before they went to the Rose Bowl, where it seemed like they were competitive in a lot of games, didn't necessarily pull out those wins under Zook, but just seeing that there's some potential there. There's a couple guys who are going to be around for many years to come. So I think this year kind of it'll be I'd say to keep the expectations low. Like don't get too ahead of yourself here, Illini fans. We're not gonna run the table or anything necessarily, but there's certainly gonna be some compelling football games to come this season.
And there's also going to be some compelling guests to come on Illini Drive this year. You want to update us
yes.
on who you've been working to get?
This Wednesday, we're going to have a returning guest from last year. We'll have Joe Spencer making an appearance in studio. really looking forward to that interview. He's a grad student now, still in the area. I'm sure he's following the team closely, and he'll have some
Definitely
things to say.
listening.
Oh, yeah. Joe, if you're out there, I know you said you were a little busy tonight, but can't wait for Wednesday. And also, for next week, we're planning a nice little 15-minute segment with Jay Lehman, former Illinois linebacker, commentator for the Big Ten Networks, a guy who I've actually heard the last few weeks as I haven't been at the stadium. And one thing I'll say is, if we're going to go back to being Champaign native, I love hearing Jay Lehman in the studio, because even though he bleeds orange and blue, and there's really no denying that whatsoever. And it's like, if I was a fan of any other program, probably wouldn't like him very much. But seeing him as an Illini fan, you really can't knock the guy.
Thanks, Will. I always find it interesting to hear your Illini perspective, since you're the only one out of us who's, been literally born and bred orange and blue, born in the city. So thanks, Will, for those final thoughts about upcoming guests. Make sure to tune in Wednesday. We're going to have Joe Spencer on the show, along with our Daily Illini sports editor, Cole Henke, who used to be the producer of mine and Jade's and Jake at the second half of the year, TNT Crew. And then Jay Lehman will have that interview sometime next week. But let's move on now to Jake. Baseball, obviously, your final thought. Talking about two very crazy streaks happening. We got the Indians 18 straight. Dodgers have lost 10 straight.
Yeah, so first of all, don't really like how you're saying baseball, obviously, so if we could just change that up in the future, that'd be awesome.
No, because you're the baseball guy.
But anyway, like you said, those two streaks are crazy. The Indians is the longest winning streak in MLB history, so that's really cool. And we were talking, it's 18.
But the A's won 20 in Moneyball.
Yep, you're right. Never mind. My bad.
They need to win.
It's their franchise. I think I believe it's their franchise.
Yeah, a franchise record. It's not the all-time either. I think it was last 50 years the A's have the top.
Okay.
Number one is probably like 20-something, like the 20s, like the Philadelphia A's or something.
Those don't count. Anyway, so the Indians, we'll start with them. 18-0, obviously, in their last 18 games. They've been scoring 6.7 runs per game, batting over 300 as a team, and their team ERA has been 1.78.
Oh, my God.
I mean, when you have a team with Corey Kluber leading it, obviously that's going to happen. Unfortunately, Kluber's not going to win the Cy Young because Chris Sale's striking people out at a ridiculous rate. But, I mean, the Indians are catching the Astros. The Astros were the runaway favorite to win the AL, and now the Indians are finally putting together the team that we saw at the end of last year that went to the World Series, took it to 7 games. So I think they're the scariest team in baseball right now, because on the flip side, the former scariest team in baseball, the Dodgers, have lost 10 straight, and which has been an astronomical fall for them, because they were on the Sports Illustrated cover a couple weeks ago as the World Series favorites, and everyone's saying it's a curse, and so it's crazy. But also they're not getting production. Their big three from Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger, and Justin Turner. I mean, over this last 2 weeks, I mean, none of them are batting over 200. They're barely hitting home runs anymore. And the worst thing is, Darvish, you traded for him at the deadline. He's got a 5 ERA since coming to LA, so it's not really what you want when you acquire someone at the deadline to help you push for the postseason. And now the Dodgers have a legitimate chance of being caught by the Diamondbacks in the division.
Wow.
Because the Diamondbacks have been playing fantastic baseball as of late as well, led by J.D. Martinez. He had 4 homers in a game last week.
Okay, question for you for your final thought. Which streak ends first? Because you got the Indians playing the Tigers at home in a 3-game set. If they win all 3 of those games, they get 21. Dodgers are at San Francisco, so you would probably assume the Dodgers would end first.
And that's the weird thing about baseball. You would want to assume that the Dodgers could beat the lowly Giants, especially in a division game. And
the White Sox beat the Giants.
Right, and it's a heated rivalry game, though. So, like, the Giants usually show up to play the Dodgers. So, I don't know. I think the Dodgers streak ends first. I think the Indians have a legitimate shot at 21. Even we were looking at their schedule off the air. They have a legit shot at 25, 26 even. The next couple series are easy for them. The Royals, the Angels, the Mariners.
And then the White Sox.
And then the White Sox to close out September. So, I mean, the Indians could take the streak through the month.
That would be crazy. That would be what, 30 some? That would be insane.
I mean, if they get through this series with the Tigers, that's 21, and then you got 3 more series. I mean, I think that's exactly 30 if they threw the Mariner series. But I think the Dodgers streak ends soon. They're just way too talented not to. I mean, it's a lot easier to win before you lose. So,
yeah.
On 2 sides of that coin. But, I mean, eventually Cody Bellinger or someone's going to hit a walk-off, and they're just too good. And, I mean, Clayton Kershaw's back, so they can't keep losing his starts. There's no way.
Yeah. But this Dodgers losing streak is definitely giving Cubs fans a little bit more hope of getting back to the World Series. Yeah, Cubs
Unless the Cubs lose the division because they
they can't beat the Brewers.
You have a 2-game lead on the Brewers.
Lost 15-2 on
Yeah,
Saturday.
we did. That's okay.
Yeah.
It happens.
Baseball-
You gotta get all the bad games out before you hit the playoffs.
The
Yeah.
Brewers.
Where are you? Where are the Cardinals at?
2 games back.
Okay,
Same
but
with the Brewers.
they're back though.
Oh, no.
Behind.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
but the
they're
Cardinals
behind?
are an awful team. They have no talent.
Okay, that's fine.
The Cardinals have 0 talent.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Baseball postseason's getting close. We're gonna. I know Jake's really excited about that. I'm really pumped about postseason
sweating.
baseball. So can't wait for that. Time for my final thought. I'm just gonna kind of give some opinions on Week 1 in the NFL this past week. Again, not very many entertaining games for the most part. Obviously, the biggest ones that pop out, the fact that the Browns and the Bears both kept it within a score against Pittsburgh and Atlanta, who for me are maybe the second and third best teams in the NFL. Very impressive. I thought Deshaun Kaiser looked good for the Browns. I thought the Bears could have beat Atlanta. Atlanta's still, I think, a little bit shaky after losing that Super Bowl. Kareem Hunt just dominating New England. No one thought the Patriots were going to lose that game. Cannot believe that happened. Rookie running backs, I think, is the story of Week 1. Leonard Fournette, over 100 yards. Kareem Hunt, just dominating for everyone's fantasy team except for Jake's because he didn't start him.
Okay, if you started Kareem Hunt, like what kind of psychic powers that you got?
My brother started Kareem Hunt, and he got 45 points for him, and he's beating me like 150-90.
That's preposterous.
Yeah, well, he didn't look at his team, and it was auto-drafted, so that actually
Nice.
doesn't count. But Christian McCaffrey playing really well for Carolina, and also Dalvin Cook starting tonight for the Vikings in Monday Night Football. That game's happening right now. There were a couple of routes. Cincinnati's offense looked awful against Baltimore. Andy Dalton throwing 4 interceptions. Cincinnati's going to have a really bad year. Cleveland could finish ahead of Cincinnati.
Matt Stafford, highest paid player in
Yeah,
in the
Stafford
league.
looked good. David Johnson injury,
No, he
obviously.
didn't.
Stafford was
Stafford
horrible.
looked awful.
He threw 4 touchdowns.
He also threw like 4 picks.
No, he didn't throw 4
he
picks.
did not. He did not play good.
He played fine. I mean, 35-23. They put up a lot of points. Best team, though, for the week, performance-wise, I'd probably have to say Jacksonville because their defense played really well against Houston, who's Tom Savage is terrible. Deshaun Watson starting for the rest of the season. Leonard Fournette looked really good. Blake Bortles could have played a little bit better, but they just lost Allen Robinson to a torn ACL, so that's really tough. Shout out to the LA Rams, who put up 46 points on the horrible defense of the Indianapolis Colts in a really empty LA Memorial Coliseum. I think the Rams are going to be a lot better this year than they were last. Packers get a big win against Seattle. Dallas did not look good against the Giants, who looked even worse. And also the Raiders and the Titans, 2 teams that I'm really high on to have good franchises over the next couple of years. Oakland, I thought played well. Derek Carr looked like a franchise quarterback again, as he usually does. And Mariota looked okay, too. And the fact that Buffalo's winning the AFC East is also surprising. And Carson Wentz played really well for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Did you see that touchdown pass he hit?
Which one?
Where the pocket was collapsing and it was
Wentz
very,
or
it was
Carr?
Wentz.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
very far.
Tremendous throw. Nelson Aguilar catching a touchdown for Philadelphia. So the Eagles look okay. Washington didn't play very well. There's a lot of really bad teams in the league, I think we saw also this week. But you know what? Browns and the Bears, really surprised. I'm really surprised the Browns only lost by 3 to Pittsburgh and the Bears 6 to Atlanta.
The Bears should have won that game. There were a couple drop passes at the end there. Jordan Howard had one hit his chest. And
Yeah.
he could have backpedaled into the end zone.
Also, Tarek Cohen is awesome.
Yeah, Cohen played really well for the Chicago Bears. Jordan Howard had an okay game. Mike Glennon could improve a little bit more, but for Mike Glennon, it looked okay. So yeah, NFL Week 1 concluding this up with these Monday night games, but that's about it for Illini Drive today. For Tommy Polcyn, Jake Hasan, Jade Hilton, and Will Gerard, I'm Orri Benatar. Thank you for listening to Illini Drive, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and info on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1. Make sure to tune in to Luke Shikoda and his team tomorrow for another edition of Illini Drive right here on WPGU 1071.